Okay.
I just happened to hear my candidacy last week on NPR with his son. My question is, what plans do you have to get the message out there, in terms of media? Before that, I hadn't heard your name. I was really happy to hear the little segment that was on there. And I'm just curious as to what plans you have for getting out to the media. I'm sure a lot of people like me have not heard this.
Yeah. I was really impressed with that NPR piece. I must have heard from everybody I went to high school with back in the Ming Dynasty. It was really it was a good testament. A couple of things about how we get my name out, because right now a lot of people know that I'm not Joe and I'm against the war, and everybody's got to know that I'm Ned and this is what I'm for. And let me tell you what we're doing. First of all, it's a primary, so I'll start small. There are about 400,000 Democrats who are likely to vote in a primary. Let's say half of them turn out on a hot day in August. We are direct mailing them. We're going to every single town committee. We're doing this 6-7 nights a week. And we're going to meet, introduce, talk to, direct mail, phone, contact each and every one of those likely voters. That's where we start. But from there, it's got to be more broad-based. I've got to meet a broader cross-section of people here in Connecticut. I can tell we've done a couple of things. Off at NedLamont.com, we have thousands of people who have volunteered. We're having house parties in as many of the 169 towns as we can. Sometimes I'm there, sometimes somebody's there on my behalf, sometimes we're doing conference calls, we've got a DVD, we've got a lot of ways that we're beginning to spread out. And from there we are going to have to we're getting a lot of good, interesting free media. There's some curiosity here about who is this guy, why is he running, is it an uphill climb, what's in his heart? And we're doing that, and we're going to start doing radio and TV, I believe, at some point before the convention, just so we can really make sure that I define who Ned Lamont is before somebody defines me. Yes?
Catherine Idris, West Hartford, New Haven. This is a two-part question. What are your exact plans for energy conservation and emission reductions, and how do you plan to get enough support for it to get done?
Okay. Energy emissions plan. I'd say three legs to that stool for me. First and foremost, something the federal government does really well is basic research. Look at the National Institute for Health and look at all the remedies and pharmaceuticals and all the spin-offs there, what that's meant for this country. So in terms of basic research, cell, battery, a lot of the basic things that we need that I don't think you're going to see General Motors doing, and even ExxonMobil is not inclined to do. We're going to see basic research as an Apollo-like plan to show our way towards energy independence over the course of the next generation. That's point number one. Point number two is going to be regulation. Regulation is going to be back to where we were in the early 80s in terms of fuel mileage standards, in terms of insulation standards, ways that we can begin to affect the market such that we'll be able to get a lot of the conservation savings, the likes of which I referred to before. And thirdly, it's just better use of the market. By that, what I mean is we've got to make driving gas guzzlers and energy inefficient uses more expensive. We've got to provide tax incentives for plug-in hybrids and good behavior going forward. And I think that way, over a period of time, we're going to be able to fundamentally tilt the balance. And let me tell you what it means. It means that clean coal, look at the coal we have in this country right now. Not the dirty sulfur-producing coal that we have in our old plants, but over time, we have as much coal in terms of reserves as Saudi has oil. You can say the same thing for the tar sands of Canada. We've got to do it in a way that's environmentally clean. We've got to build those costs into whatever we do going forward. Put under that the renewable resources we have. It's $60 a barrel. These things are now economically feasible. We just have to create a structure where people invest in it and they know that it can happen. I think we're going to be free of our dependence on fossil fuels in less than the next generation. If we're serious about it, we start now. Go ahead. What was part two?
Part two is how are you going to get enough support to get it done?
How do I get enough support to get it done? I'll tell you how you do it politically. Politically, you do it saying, this is what I'm going to do when I'm a candidate. And we knock people's socks off and have the biggest upset in history on August 8th. And one of the reasons Democrats turned out and made this statement is because we were committed to energy independence. We're committed to an environmental future. And I think when you walk into the halls of the U.S. Senate with that behind you, Harry Reid says, I think there's some momentum behind an idea like this. And I'll follow up one other thing on the environment, if you don't mind, just to step back a little bit. I mean, you look at the fact that 90% of the energy used in this world right now is utilized by a couple billion people, those of us in the developed world, and all the pollution is created by us as well. Think about the fact that with India and China and a few other nations coming online, joining the middle class, joining the developed world, joining the thirst for energy and fossil fuels, what our future might be if we don't think internationally, don't think globally, if we don't make the environment key to absolutely everything we do as a country going forward. And that, to me, was what was so disgraceful about the way the Bush administration walked away from the Kyoto agreements. You can fuss and say, okay, the Kyoto agreements needed some fine-tuning and it was expensive and it has to include China. But A, we thumbed our nose at the rest of the world, and B, Kyoto was an example of how the world is going to have to work together to deal with an issue like global warming and the environment in a serious way. And we sent just the opposite message. Yes, sir.
My name is Ken McNally. I'm a member of the Seymour Democratic Town Commission. Recently, I guess yesterday or today, Massachusetts either passed or was about to pass a new law forcing all of its people to have health care. Do you agree with that, or do you think there's a better solution?
Well, look, first of all, I salute Massachusetts for trying to do something in terms of universal, affordable health care. I haven't heard Senator Lieberman on this issue since he was dismissive of the Hillary Clinton plan. I haven't heard much out of this current administration, except for the fact that they say health care is not a basic right, but here, have a health savings account, you're on your own. So I salute Mitt Romney for at least making an effort at it. And I think it will provide for universal health care up there. I have a different strategy. I mean, my strategy when it comes to universal affordable health care, I come out as a small businessman, I got to confess to you. I'm a guy that, we're crushed by health care costs in this country. It hurts small business, it hurts job creation and growth, just as it, devastates that poor family in Bridgeport that's worried about where their health benefits are going to go when they lose their good-paying job. So the first thing I would do is I would make it an employer mandate. I think that health care is a universal right that should be guaranteed for everybody in this country. We ought to have a basic health care standard that we say is universal, and Walmart and the big box and whoever it is, they're going to have to provide health care for all their employees up to a certain standard that we say is our universal and our basic. That's number one. And that takes, who's uninsured in this country? People who are working a 40-hour week. These guys are all working, and they just can't afford the health insurance that offered to them. That was a lot of what the Sikorsky thing was I was talking about. Point number two, as a small businessman, we got to be able to buy into pools, maybe buy into Medicare, buy into the congressional program. That begins to hold down the cost and makes it a lot more affordable for business. And point number three, there's no getting around it, the federal government's going to have to step in and help subsidize on the health care costs. There is just no way that American manufacturing can compete around the world if we've got to pay $2,000 per automobile, where across the border in Canada they don't have that cost. It's paid for another way. So I think part of our competitive future and fairness, we're going to have universal affordable health care, and that's sort of my three-tier plan.